The little boy was shocked to discover that the father he thought had died years ago was actually standing right next to him. But everyone insisted that the man was just his father's twin brother. Even his aunt claimed his father was long gone, but the boy was sure he hadn't made a mistake. Every time the man came home, the boy would call him dad, but the man always pushed him away coldly. Even his wife couldn't deny how much this man resembled her late husband. Still, her husband was gone, and she had no choice but to accept the truth, raising the child on her own. 3 years later, on a rainy night, she overheard her father-in-law talking to the man, and the truth shattered her world. It wasn't the man's brother who had died. It was him, her husband's twin, and her own husband had faked his death, taking his brother's place, so his sister-in-law wouldn't carry the shame of being a widow. The woman was devastated. She couldn't understand why he'd lie when they had such a happy marriage. She'd even refused to move to the city with his wealthy mother, choosing instead to stay in the village, to live as a widow for the rest of her life, all for a lie. Looking at her well-behaved son, she was furious her husband had let the child grow up fatherless, so she decided that he would pay for everything he'd done. If he chose to abandon her and raise someone else's wife and child, then she no longer owed him anything. She remembered what her mother had once said, that her childhood sweetheart had always promised to marry her. After her husband's death, he had come forward again, and now he was a billionaire CEO, so she made her decision to give her son a real, complete family. That night, she quietly went to the next room and called her mother. Her mother was overjoyed to hear she'd finally agreed to the proposal. The CEO had already promised to treat the boy like his own. The woman planned to leave after the traditional 3-year mourning period, to honor her late husband's sacrifice one last time. The next day at breakfast, watching her husband play dad to someone else's child, she lost her appetite entirely. She told her father-in-law that her late husband's memorial was in 2 days, and she'd be going to town tomorrow to prepare. Hearing this, the man offered to accompany her, but before she could decline, her son spoke up first. For the first time, he didn't call him dad, he called him uncle. The man froze, and asked if he'd heard that right. The boy nodded, saying he now understood he'd mistaken his uncle for his dad before, and promised not to make the mistake again. The man's face went stiff. He looked like he'd realized something. He tried to explain, but his father quickly stopped him, so he simply said that as the boy's uncle, it was only right he looked after them. But the woman coldly replied that since he wasn't the child's real father, they didn't need his help anymore. Then she left with her son. The next day, she took her son to town to buy supplies for the wedding. Before leaving, the boy spotted a beautiful wedding dress and said she would look stunning in it. She agreed to try it on, since she was about to be married. When she stepped out in the gown, even the staff were amazed by her beauty, and she bought it on the spot. Just as they were leaving, the man and his sister-in-law entered the same shop. Seeing her in a bridal store, the man demanded to know what she was doing there, but the woman reminded him that he was just her late husband's brother and had no say in her life anymore. Then she walked out without looking back. He noticed the dress she bought, but assumed it was just a normal outfit, certain that she still loved him too much to remarry. Finally, the wedding day arrived. The CEO sent his assistant to pick her and